If your goal is to own so much real estate that you get passive income and you can hire a manager to totally think about it and retire on a beach, this episode is for you because it starts with wholesaling. Before you can buy that rental properties and put 25% down on each property, you need to earn more money and you need to find skills to figure out which properties are going to cash flow and be good deals. So in this episode, I get interviewed by Jimmy Rex. He's asking me about my rental portfolio, which brings me $33,000 a month in top line revenue and $12,000 a month net. And so I'm going to talk about how I created a marketing tool that many of you wholesalers are using to find great deals, and a tool that I use myself still to buy 7 properties this year in 2024 alone, one that I made $125,000 on alone. So I hope you enjoy this episode and view it through a lens that will appreciate why you're wholesaling right now and what you can get to once you build those skills.
David, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you so much, Rex.
Yeah, dude. Anytime I'm using the software, by the way, I appreciate that. You know, calling me by my last name like that. I feel like we're close friends already. We're 4 seconds into the podcast. I like that. But no, anytime I use a software and, obviously I have a chance to talk to the founder and the owner of that creation, it gets me excited to do that. And that's the case today. I've been using your software with my flip company for a couple of years now. And you've built a pretty cool little machine there, man, to use the word of what it is you're doing.
I really appreciate that, man. And yeah, I didn't even mean for it to be a business. So it's kind of crazy that it's become this business. And it was just a selfish thing I made to help myself, to be honest.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. I love telling the story about, how cool companies are created and formed and built. And in addition to that, about every 15th episode of my podcast is a real estate investor episode. Anyways, you, like myself, are big in real estate investing. But how did this whole thing even come about?
The whole thing came about because I was like hating my life. I was working for this small tech company that taught me a lot, but I was like really, really tired of carrying my laptop everywhere in case a bug happened that I had to squash, and I actually slept with it under my pillow. I'm not exaggerating, so that I could take that call and fix that bug wherever I was at. And it finally came to a head when I was at my best friend's wedding and I had to fix a bug during the reception. He actually got mad at me. And so I was like, man, I learned a lot.
By the way.
Yeah, I learned a lot working for this company. He's my business partner now. So I made him part of the solution. Yeah, I actually realized I needed to do something else. And I noticed that guy who owned that company, he also had 5 rental properties. And I was like, why do you have those? I thought stocks were the way to retire early. And he was like, well, the stock market can go up and down. And the real estate, if you buy it right and you manage it well, it'll always make you money every single month. So I was super pumped to go out, find a real estate investment so that I could end up quitting my job. So that's how I got started. That's how I got interested in it. And there's a few more parts of the story, which I'm happy to get into.
Sure. Well, so did you start out, DealMachine obviously is a software that people use to go find people that want to sell their home for a discount is kind of the main thing you're using it for home flippers, wholesalers, all that kind of stuff. So were you getting into the flip game? Were you trying to just get deals at a big discount, or were you wholesaling it first?
Yeah, I got to get into the weeds of the story a little bit more. So I went looking for a rental property and nothing would cash flow on the market. And I went back to him. I was like, hey, how do you find these great deals? And then I felt discouraged when he was like, yo, I got these like in 2009. I'm not sure you could buy a deal like this now. And so I was like, man, there's got to be some other way. And I found a meetup after I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And at this meetup, there was people doing deals all the time. So then I was super pumped and I went and I took their advice, which was go look for rundown houses and find who owns it by looking them up on the county record and send them a letter that says, would you like an offer on your house? I can close quickly and with cash. And if you're interested, call or text me. Have a great day. So I did that, spent about 2 months writing down addresses, looking for these rundown properties. So that way I could get a great deal. And I just needed to find somebody that wanted to sell at a discount. And I kind of my stomach dropped after I saw one under construction. I was like, I'm pretty sure I had that on my list. And I went home and looked it up. Sure enough, somebody else bought it for a great price. Could have been an awesome first deal for me, but I hadn't even sent out my letters after doing this for 2 months. So I was like, man, I've got a follow-up issue. And so long story short, I ended up using the development skills I had on the computer side to just make this super basic app. It had a map. I could pin the house And then another company I connected to it so they could send out a letter once I pinned a house. And so then I could pin houses and have like these letters sent. So to help my follow through problem, that's how the Deal Machine concept came to be. But I never put it on the App Store until somebody at that meetup later, I showed them. They're like, well, I'll spend $1,000 to try any new marketing because I come to Indianapolis, I buy 30 homes per month. And I was like, 30 homes per month? What? Like, that was so hard for me to imagine. And then I sold, $1,000 worth of this app that I didn't even know how to price or what, so I was like, oh man, I got to put this on the App Store.
Just pretty brilliant. And so you originally were just using it for yourself and then realized, wait, I have something here. I should just see if other people want to use this.
Yeah. And I think I never tried to change anyone's behavior, but what made it successful was I just made it easier to do what people were already doing, which is driving around and looking for those houses. Because on the investor side of things, that's been the advice for like decades. Like people, they call it driving for dollars. So that's been around for decades.
Yeah, no, we're using it in our own business. It got harder and harder to find good deals, in our flip business. And the trick to a flip business, for those that have done it, they all know this. There's two things. One, it's a volume game, and then two is it's about those really killer deals. You do a lot of average deals, a lot of decent deals, a lot of shitty deals, and then you get that killer deal that makes up for all the other ones and brings the average point, up on everything. And if you're doing volume at all, you have to drive for dollars. You have to be going around looking for these properties. And the hardest part is contacting the owners, figuring out who owns it, getting a hold of them. And your software essentially does that for everybody, correct?
It does. Yeah, it does. Absolutely. All you have to do is pin houses and send mail.
So for you personally, I mean, a lot's changed in the game. Obviously, you've probably focused more on your software company now than you are on the real estate investing side. How many clients or customers, monthly users do you have now currently with DealMachine?
About 6,500.
Damn. Nice. Yeah, that's I'm one of them. So that's kind of cool. It's funny because so many people in real estate overcomplicate things. What I love about your story is you took something that it was right in front of everybody, and you're just the guy that did it and made it super simple to use. I'm guessing there's other companies that tried to do similar things, but what made you so successful? Why did yours take off where maybe some of these other things didn't?
That's a really good question. And unfortunately, I sit in a biased place, but I'll just say this. A huge difference is if you go to the mobile app and you look at the reviews, we've got, 5,000 reviews, 4.8 star average. And I think a lot of the other people out there, they tried to build an app like a house. For one, they kind of built it more desktop focused than app focused. And then two, they just built it once and stopped updating it. So that's what I mean by they built it like a house, because there were other investors that saw that and they're like, oh, I want to make a software like this. And so I think it made me nervous. There's like 9 copycats coming out of the woodwork. I was like, oh, shoot, this is scary. What's going on? But I think, we've continued to update it every 2 weeks since 2017 when we founded it. And also, so we focused on the mobile version. So that means software that doesn't have bugs on the map. And it's pretty difficult to do, honestly, because every time Apple updates their software, your app might, encounter a new bug or two, and you've got to fix this.
Yeah. Well, speaking of updating and staying in with the trends, one thing that I noticed that you guys have done is you've added an AI feature. Maybe speak to that. How come that became such an important piece so quickly for you guys? And where do you see real estate investing in general going with AI?
Well, one thing I love is that we get to help people who may not be happy with their job and want financial freedom. They want to build a life they love. And so they typically see real estate, specifically wholesaling, as the way to do that. And they need more than just the app to get it done. So the app can help them with the follow-up, but they typically will struggle with like 3 main things. And it's going to be analysis paralysis. And the AI assistant we saw was a way for them to like double check what they already know to give them confidence to go make that offer, or go make that phone call, so they can ask for a seller script or what to say if the seller said this, or what is this house even worth? And this is like the one thing that ChatGPT alone can't do for you, but the AI assistant and DealMachine has access to the real estate data. So it can answer those types of questions about the value. So that was like the huge reason why we wanted to create that AI assistant.
Got it. And so, I mean, just in general, where do you see real estate going over the next couple of years? What are you personally doing? What are you investing in? as a real estate investor, take off your, software hat for a second, and just in real estate in general, what are you doing currently with real estate investing?
Yeah. So I bought a couple deals this year and I've got a couple more in the works, hopefully. I wish I would have bought more properties, but you're right. I stopped after, a couple years. The software was really a big opportunity. And so then I looked back and I was like, man, like these things appreciated, these 9 rental properties all together appreciated about $1 million. And I was like, well, if I wouldn't have stopped, I'd just have $5 more million, out of thin air there. And so I just, wanted to prioritize buying more properties. And I know a lot of people have hesitated because the interest rate's so high, but if I waited to time the market, I would have never got started because my boss was already telling me, he's like, hey, you missed your window, these great deals. But I think you've got to find deals in every market. And so that's the approach that I'm taking now, even though I took a little hiatus. It was just like, man, I wish I would have bought a lot more and not stopped.
Yeah, I mean, I bought, in a 10-year period, I bought about 30 houses that I kept them all. I mean, I bought a lot more that I sold or whatever. And I kick myself. I'm like, I can't believe I didn't buy more. Because I knew they were all going to just keep going up, right? And like you said, if you buy it correctly, the beauty of real estate, what your boss told you, or that guy that you were referring to earlier, that own the five properties, is in real estate. If you buy it correctly, it doesn't matter what the market's doing. It can go up or down or sideways. You just keep cash flowing every single month, and then just make sure that you're in a position you can hold it till you have to sell at the right time, or you get to choose when to sell, and that's when you can make a lot of money. For me, it has gotten more difficult. We were flipping, I think 2011, I flipped like 35 homes. Last year we flipped, almost the same amount. This year, it's less than half of that. I got a little bit gun shy just because it's kind of an interesting time in real estate, because typically in the past, you could look at trends and graphs and you could kind of gauge where things were going, but the world's just upside down now. They just keep pulling different levers and things like that. It's really hard to tell what's going on. And I think I have a little PTSD from, 2006 and 2007 when it all collapsed. But so I've been a little bit more hesitant. What are you seeing overall? I mean, you guys have the data with your software company. Are flippers finding better deals now? Are there still plenty of deals out there, or what's the data say?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are worried, and rightfully so. There's change happening. So it's good to be paying attention to what the change is happening. Interesting that you pulled back a little bit on flipping. And I hear that too, because right, you're sitting on inventory that's not cash flowing while you're working on it. So if the values went down, you could be in trouble, right? What I'm seeing on most of our users, they wholesale, is they're getting more creative. Instead of doing a straight wholesale deal where it's like buying the whole house, making the wholesale fee and then the buyer paying cash, they're actually doing like a lot more subject to, and they can wholesale those as well. So my friend in Minneapolis was just telling me yesterday that they're doing more deals. They're all subject to, where they're communicating, the seller leaves their financing in place, which is typically at 3 or 4% at a 30-year fixed rate. Then they'll market the deal, and they will keep that financing in place for the end buyer, but they'll just take like a $20,000 wholesale fee. So I think that's what's happening more, is that people are using strategies like that.
Yeah, I'm close friends with Pace Morby. He's been on the show and everything, and we talk a lot about this. The whole problem that we have right now is nobody wants to get a new loan when they're in their current house at 2-3% interest rate, right? And so a lot of the market just isn't acting, basically because they're just staying where they are. So for you, with the average person that wants to get into real estate investing, let's say they have very little experience at this point, what's the process for them using DealMachine to go out and become a real estate investor? How could they use your service?
Yeah, you don't even need DealMachine. All right. But the decades old advice is like, go look for rundown properties, look up who owns it, send them a letter that says, do they want to sell their house quickly, and then give you a call. So DealMachine helps you be able to pin that house. You don't have to write it down. And then it helps you with the follow through by sending a piece of mail straight from the app. So you can just keep going and keep finding that house. So,
and you have like data on the best mail outs that work the best and stuff. And you can just use the templates that you have right there, correct?
Yeah, exactly. There's templates right inside DealMachine that are already done for you. You don't have to design any of that. Of course, there's like advanced things that DealMachine does, but honestly, it just boils down to 2 things. It's like add the properties and send mail. Those are your revenue generating activities. Customizing your own postcard with custom colors and stuff, like maybe not, maybe not until you've done a few deals would you want to do that. I would direct people to just focus on those adding properties and sending mail.
Yeah. Well, and so for you, what is your current, do you use your own service to pick up a bunch of deals right now? Are you currently buying real
Yeah.
estate in the market?
Oh yeah. I've got about 1,200 driving for dollars deals I'm marketing to right now, sending about 7 postcards. And then I'm also experimenting with sending offers at like 70% list price on the market if they've been on the market for over 45 days. And so I've been doing that for 3 months, and I send like probably like 35, 40 offers a week. I think I've got my first one that's going to close and be a $50,000 deal. And if you talk to me in a couple of weeks, I would know for sure.
And you're just wholesaling that deal?
So yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So how do you decide as a real estate investor, what criteria do you use to know which neighborhoods to go drive or which areas to look into buy?
Well, honestly, right now, I want the price of the house. It should be above $200,000. And Indianapolis is a great market for cash flow, but you can get in trouble, in my case, if you're in a neighborhood where like the best house is worth $50,000. So if you buy a rundown house, how are you going to make any money on that if the best one in the neighborhood is only worth 50, right? So I've got a driver and I tell him to stay away from neighborhoods where there's like $50,000 houses. Go in these neighborhoods where they could be worth $200,000. And in Indianapolis, the average is like 250, right? So I'm just kind of in that ballpark of what the market average is, and then looking for houses that haven't been updated that could be worth that much if they were updated.
Yeah. And so when you say you average or you offer 70% of the list price, is that based on the after repair value, or is that just the current value that they have it on the MLS for?
Yeah, it's I don't even look at the houses. Honestly, I just send the offer at 70%. And if they reply, then I'll maybe look closer to make a counter that's like really the max I could pay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I started working with American Homes for Rent back in 2011. And that was really what catapulted my career, because I got to work with any of the off the market deals. And I wish I had DealMachine back then. We actually went door to door, and I set up a door to door service, and we just had a criteria from American Homes for Rent. And if it worked, we could make the offer right there. And if they'd said yes, and I sold about 85 homes in 3 months. And I got a full commission on every single deal. It was just a crazy time.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was
85 in 3 months.
Yeah. Then American Homes for Rent ran out of money in our market. Unfortunately, I thought, if I could have kept that going for another year, we were going to be rich, but that really is what catapulted my career at that point. And they just had a criteria. Same thing. Is like they just said, they were buying everything already at the auctions. They were already buying everything on the MLS. And a friend of mine said, hey, I have a realtor who would go door to door and find additional deals for you guys. And they were like, oh, if you can find the deals. And I didn't know if it would work. And I'll be damned. It was like every 5th, 6th house we talked to wanted an offer. It was before everything had kind of shot back up again. And yeah, man, it was crazy. We were just walking up. People had no intention of selling their home, and 30 days later they were gone. It was all day long. It was happening.
That's crazy. So how did you transition away from American Homes for Rent if you were selling 85,000 or 85 properties in 3 months?
Well, I'd had a couple big years before that. Like my second year as a realtor, I sold 98 homes in 2007. And so that was just me and one assistant. So I had a really good system in place. And so what that did though was, it had been 2 years where you're fighting. I mean, 2009 and 10 were brutal, 2008 as well. So 3 years where, every person you talked to was upside down. And so it was just a depressing time to be in real estate, because everybody had done 0% loans. So nobody had equity in their homes. Everybody was upside down. And the market bottomed out in November of 2011. If you look at all the graphs, that's when it hit its bottom. And so I got in at a good time. We just started kind of coming back up. And so people started getting equity again. People started getting excited, and then people were able to sell. And so I just grinded. I actually called for sell by owners every day for 3 hours. And that's how I built my business at that point. And so once that took off though, and I kind of had a view like yourself, it was interesting. So many realtors don't focus on investors very much. Me and my real estate partner, Tyler, we've now sold over 7,000 homes to investors between us. And so we just saw this writing on the wall. We were selling homes in Scottsdale for $125,000 that had a swimming pool. It was just crazy, right? And you're doing the math. You're like, the pool's worth $125,000. And so we, they were cash flowing big time. And so we just were pushing people to all these different properties. And I would go out and find a home, and then I would just hit up everyone I had with money and said, somebody needs to buy this damn thing. And that's kind of how we started getting in with investors again. We were just a little bit ahead of the curve, but just like you did with your software, I think that's one of the keys. And maybe you can speak to this a little bit, because I think a lot of people hear your story and they want to have that big idea. They want to have that thing that's going to push. And I think too many people look at what's happening and they don't look at what's the next wave, like what's coming next. And most of the people that have been able to ride one of these waves like you did, they had that foresight. That's what I did. I just got in the investor game before everybody else. And so everyone was coming to me for investment properties. They knew that we were the realtors that, had our pulse on that. So maybe you could speak to that to somebody that's trying to figure out what to do. They want to start a company. They want to have, a big success like you've done. What advice do you have for that person that's maybe just getting out of college and has no idea where to go, what direction to go with themselves?
Hey guys, if you know you want to quit your job in the next 3 months, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast, because we've got some incredible frameworks with step-by-step instruction that you're not going to want to miss. Also, leave us a rating and review to let us know your favorite parts and why you want to get financial freedom.
It's a great question. In my experience, what I did was I was really focused on getting that first rental property for myself. So I was like obsessed with that. And the company I created ended up being something to solve my own problem that I encountered while doing that thing. And so I sought out to start a real estate investing company. The software was like a bit of an accident in some way. And when I started, I didn't even put pressure on myself for it to be a thing. I was like, all I really want is this thing to help me get a rental property. Like that would be amazing. And that's all I'm actually looking for. On the investor side of things, though, if you're marketing for properties, one thing I've noticed, and I wonder if you could shed some light on this as well, is that strategies seem to go in cycles. It's just like mail is really hot, and then it was, cold calling, then it was texting, and then texting got saturated. So then people come back to mail again. And I've noticed that there always seems to be a hot new marketing strategy. And I would say, if you're just starting out, probably don't try all the marketing strategies. But you could actually expect some of them to become a little bit more effective as investors shift to whatever the next thing is.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice. People, especially in this world we live in, there's so much noise, right? There's so many different angles you can take at something. The benefit that I had when I started out in real estate is I knew one way to find people that wanted to sell their houses without spending money, which was for sell by owners. So that became my default strategy. I'm like, these people put a giant ass red sign in their yard and say, I need to sell my house and I don't have a realtor. So I was like, well, that seems like a pretty hot lead. And so I just got really good at calling for sell by owners, and I would always talk to agents. They're like 21 strategies I use to market homes, and they're selling like 12 homes a year. I'm like, oh, congratulations, it's not working. And so, you want to get excellent at one thing. Like life in general, I'm sure it's this way for you guys. When you have people call you up, whether they're going to use your service or not, and they're talking to your salespeople, maybe sometimes they talk to you. There's only so many new objections. Like once you've heard 3 weeks worth of objections, there's not any new ones. And so if you just get really good at knowing what the objections are, knowing what to say, and learn how to say it really well, and then the only thing you have to do to make a lot of money is say it all day long. Like that's kind of how I looked at real estate. And so for me, I got really good at call for sell by owners, and then I got really good at the social media game, and then I got really good at throwing parties. Those were the 3 strategies that I used to get all my clients, and there was a bunch of strategies that I'm sure would have worked as well, but I just never touched them. One of which was internet leads. I never understood you're really good at software and all that stuff. You would have crushed, I'm sure, with internet leads. But for me, I was like, I might as well have been speaking Chinese every time I tried.
I love that you actually got really good at throwing parties. I wish I could have gotten invited to one of those.
Yeah, bro. That's by the way, as I always said, people, I was like, I might not have the best real estate business, but I got the funnest real estate business. That was my theory.
Yeah. And then people wanted to do business with you. So what would you say to like a for sale by owner, by the way?
Well, it was interesting. When I first started calling them, it was kind of funny because I knew when I got in the business that was a strategy, but my original broker, none of them called for sell by owners. You really got to get with a brokerage that's experienced in calling them. And so I remember the first time I called them, I had a list of like 10 of them, and I was so excited. It was like my 3rd day on the job, dude. And I call up and I'm like, hey, this is Jimmy Realtor, whatever. And I'm like trying to get them to work, and they're all hanging up on me, rude as hell, right?
And because they already thought, they're like, I don't want an agent. That's why they listed it by themselves.
This is a disaster. And then I got to the point where I was calling so many and got so good at it. When I first started calling them, I'd get an appointment 1 out of 70. By the time I was done calling for sell by owners, I'd get an appointment 1 out of about 12. Mike Ferry, I used his system. He's like the GOAT of real estate trainers and stuff like that. And he had a script. And I got really good at giving that script. I just memorized. I would practice it every day for about a half hour. Then I'd give it for 3 hours a day. I haven't done it since 2012. And I bet I could ramble it off right now, word for word. And it was like, I just got really good at doing it. And it was funny because people would come shout at me all the time. And they'd be like, dude, like, aren't you afraid we're going to steal business and things like that? I was like, no, you guys aren't going to do it. And they'd watch me call. I'd call 30 people and get my ass handed to me 29 times. But I knew if I did that every day, I had an appointment every day, 5 appointments. I was 4 listings a week. I was making, I was the #1 agent in the county. And so it was just a numbers game, man. Just kept it going.
That's definitely work that not a lot of other people are willing to do.
Yeah, there was like 10 of us out of 2,000 agents in the entire county that would actually call for sell by owners. We all knew each other. To this day, we're all close friends. And all 10 of us are like top agents. Every single one of us makes multi-million dollars a year doing real estate or something else because we were the hustlers. Like we would wait for each other outside a house. I remember literally dozens of times I would be waiting outside this house for one of these other 9 realtors that was really good at doing this. And we would just follow each other in. And it was going to be one of us that got the deal because out of 2,000, 3,000 of us, there was only 10 of us even calling those leads.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you guys were all really fun and good friends.
Yeah, it wasn't always friendly, but like as we all, actually it was always pretty good because there was a respect. We all used the same system. We literally all used the same script. That was the funniest part. Like these poor for sale
students.
Yeah, like these poor for sale by owners by 8:20 in the morning had been called 6 times with the same script. I'm sure they were just like, what the hell is going on? Was there a seminar in town or something? But yeah, man, it was good times. I think back on it and I don't know, I have so much love for that part of my career. I wouldn't want to do it like that again. It was a lot of hard work. But I'm guessing you look at the same way. Like when you were starting out, there's so much honor in, that grind. You don't know what you're doing, but you're having fun and you're trying shit and just seeing what happens.
Totally.
So as you look back, what gives you the most pride as far as what you've built? Now you've built an amazing company, man. Like it really is. It not only is it a very useful company, it makes a lot of people money. It makes a lot of middle class and lower class people make income that they never thought possible, which is really special thing. There's a amount of satisfaction you can take in that. I know I have friends that had to decide between paying the house payment or buying food this month. And they got into wholesaling using your service. And all of a sudden they made more money on one deal in 2 weeks than they brought home in a year at their job previously. I'm sure you hear these stories all the time.
Oh man, that definitely does make me feel really special. But my natural inclination is like, yo, you did that, right? You put in the work and did that. I'm really glad you used DealMachine to help you out, but I'm always like feeling like weird when they are like, thank you, David. So I'm glad it's definitely helping people. That's definitely got to be one of the proudest accomplishments of my life for sure so far. And one of the things I'm really enjoying now is actually one of those people is Ryan Haywood. In 2019, he was like working for a telecom or satellite company, and they like switched up his pay, and he wasn't getting as much as he was doing the same amount of work for. And he was just like really frustrated with it. And he heard about this challenge where he could do a wholesaling, 30-day challenge. And he's like, I'm going to do this because I'm so pissed off at my boss. And he got like a deal for $8,500 in 14 days of work. And so now like he and his wife, they do this full time. They've done 400 deals now. And that's pretty crazy because now we co-host a podcast ourselves that we started this year, but it's pretty wild that he got his start and he pretty much only does like driving for dollars and building relationships in his small town that he lives in. So I would say that's definitely a highlight.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. So what's next for you? Are you looking to bring on equity and money and grow this or sell part of this? Do you have kind of plans where you're looking to go in the next couple of years with DealMachine?
Yeah, so we don't plan on bringing any partners on. It's me and my business partner that own it 50% each. We bootstrapped, so we didn't hire anybody until we actually had the money to pay them. We worked for probably 2 years each before even paying ourselves, right? So we kind of put in a lot of dues in order to have a business where we don't have to answer to anybody. Oh, now, of course, we've got to make something that people care about and they want to use. And so that's great. But honestly, I don't know what I would do with money if we raised it. I did hire our staff up to 50 employees, but now we're down to 28, and that's like a good size. But I will say I made a lot of hires that didn't actually like push our growth further. And so it just raised our expenses. And so I let that kind of undo itself over a couple of years. If there was some attrition, I didn't replace people. So I got really good at communicating like what was going on to my employees. And I will say we just did a survey. I'm so proud of this right now. Is as the CEO, you don't really build the product anymore, but you build the team that builds the product. And so our team, we asked this survey, ENPS, it stands for Net Promoter Score. It's that question we've all answered, like, how likely would you be to recommend, DealMachine as a place to work? And it scored from negative 100 to 100. 33 is like pretty good. And we scored a 90 on ours this last quarter. So the team we have now is like super bought into the mission, seems to be very happy, and the company's healthier as well.
That's an amazing stat. I think we all go through that where you bring people on thinking you're going bigger, but it's just all of a sudden you're just losing money and expenses going out the door. What else? I mean, there's so many lessons to learn from you, like to get a score of a 90. What have you done to build that culture or that kind of satisfaction in the workplace?
So we've got a couple things. And one thing that's pretty controversial, I just did this Instagram video, is I do not accept counter offers. And so let me explain. So when I worked in corporate America, I actually worked really hard and I did not get a raise. Or it was, like a 1 or 2% raise. I asked for a raise and I did not get one. I noticed that new people who just joined out of college came in at a higher salary than I was at. And so then I went to get a counter offer and I said, I'm going to quit and take this other job. And then they offered me a huge raise. But so, I mean, I could have stayed and gotten the raise, but I was just so pissed off because they have this culture that doesn't recognize work. Instead, it's rewarding like laziness, right? Like it's easier to go get a counter offer and get a higher salary than it is to like put in a lot of work and do well. So at DealMachine, I learned this up from a group called the COO Alliance. He was like, if you ever get a counter offer, you can never acknowledge it, because if you give somebody a raise because they gave you a counter offer, they're going to tell other people at lunch, and then they're going to get a counter offer. So you're either going to end up paying more, or you're just going to piss off top performers, kind of like I was mad in my corporate environment. So I think that's one thing. I try to be very transparent. This is the second thing with everything that's going on. So everyone in our company, they know our cash position. They know how much me and my business partner distribute every month as owners. And so my financial advisor was looking at the graph. He's like, you showed this to your company? I was like, yeah, I did actually, because I definitely would want to know. I worked for a company that was small, like I had mentioned earlier, and they let somebody go. I was like, shit, am I going to be next? Because they weren't very transparent about it. And so even in the cases where we've had to let somebody go, we've actually communicated way more than you would expect. Not saying anything bad about the person, but like, look, we had 3 performance improvement plans. We just realized like this was a difference that we couldn't resolve. And so I just want people to always know the truth, almost like to a fault. It's probably annoying for some people, but the people we have, I think, really appreciate it. Well, and so those are some differences that would feel a little different, I think.
Yeah, one thing I loved about when I was a realtor at Keller Williams is it's an open book company. And so you saw how much money the company was making. You saw how much every agent was making. So nobody's walking around like they're a big deal unless they actually were. But one of the things I noticed, I do this with my companies too. I mean, even the podcast studio that I'm in, right? Like I want to give my guy a raise, but I do open books so they can see it. I'm like, look, man, we're still barely making any money here, or even losing money some months. It's like, as soon as we get this to a certain place, you're the first person that's going to benefit from that. But I think a lot of times employees think you're making a lot more money than you are. They don't realize how expensive it can be to run a company. And so when you are transparent with them and you just show them like, hey, here's where we're at, I think that it creates a little bit more of a team camaraderie where they're not like, oh, the boss is just bringing home all this money. And, it's not always what it appears to be. And so that's something that I've incorporated into my different companies as well, just because I think it helps everybody get on the same team.
Transparency just avoids wasted energy when we are worried about what ifs. And so if I can alleviate that kind of energy, I think people will be happier. And then they'll also probably be more productive because they're not like worried about stuff.
And people sometimes think you have a lot more money than you do. I remember this person hit me up for a charity event recently. They're like, hey, can I sit with you? I want to, and I donated a pretty large amount. This was like the most I'd ever donated to one charity. I gave them $25,000, which was like stretched me to the core, right? As far as donation to one thing. And I just believed in what they were doing. And so I donated it. And the head of the charity sat me down a few months later. They're like, hey, can we sit down? And they wanted me to donate an astronomical amount of money. And I literally just laughed out loud. And I said, oh my gosh, I wish I had as much money as you think I do. I was like, that 25 grand was me like going way above and beyond.
Yeah.
That wasn't like my foot in the door. Here's a little trickle to get it started kind of thing. And I just laughed. I'm like, oh, and I'm like, how much money do you think I have? And the number she told me was legitimately 30 times more than I actually have. And I was just laughing. I was just like, where does this idea come from? But people just assume, if you are willing to do a couple things or you take a little bit of risk with your company, so maybe you really invest a lot of money into it, it's everything you have.
Mm-hmm.
And they just assume you have way more than you do.
For sure. I'll say this. I got some feedback from my team that was like, man, David, after you read this book called Humor Seriously, and you've been telling all these jokes, I could tell you're just like so happy it comes through. And this is my favorite job I've ever worked. And it's like helping the team feel like they like their jobs more too. So that was a freaking awesome book I read last year. And the number one takeaway was you should make jokes. You shouldn't be afraid to use jokes at work. A lot of people are. They're like, as long as they're not inappropriate jokes, even if they're not funny, people will think more highly of you, right? You will be liked more, even if they're not actually funny jokes. The fact that you're just willing to go out there and just make a joke makes people think that you're having more fun, and that's fun to be around.
Yeah, that's invaluable information, man. I can't stand a place that you just don't enjoy going to, right? Like I just want to be around people that are fun or that can laugh. And I think part of having a good sense of humor is knowing what's appropriate and what's not. I know when I was in like junior high, I got in trouble every other day because I didn't know what was appropriate, and you kind of figure that out as you go. But that's really good advice you don't hear very often, but not forgetting to laugh and have a good time. I think that's really important, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you being on the podcast. For people that want to know more about you or DealMachine, where do we send them?
DealMachine.com. I'm most active on Instagram. DLeco is my handle.
Awesome, man. And you're out in Austin, Texas. Is that correct?
That's right.
Cool. And then real quick, couple of real estate investor questions. What are 2 or 3 top markets you're seeing right now that people should look at for real estate investing?
All right. So if you want to know where the country's going, San Diego and like Phoenix will give you early indicators about what the rest of the country is going to do. And it's typically because those are the ones pushed up the highest in terms of appreciation. And if you want to know what the rest of the company is going to do price-wise, you'll see San Diego and Phoenix kind of pull back first, for example. So that's one thing I learned. In terms of markets where people are going, I would say do not try it in New York if you can help it, because there's so many laws I just learned. I was like, how could you? I can't even believe you guys do this in New York.
We don't even sell homes to our investors unless it's a red state at this point, just being honest, because there's so many weird laws they can throw in. You can have a renter for a decade that doesn't pay you.
Oh my gosh. You could be dealing with an eviction for like 15 plus months in New York City. And then also you can't give a contract to buy their house unless it goes through an attorney. So like there's so many like hoops and jumps to like get the contract in place. You can't just like put together a 3-pager and do a deal like you can in Indianapolis. Like that's where I do it. Right. So even though I live in Texas, I still invest in Indianapolis because it's a market that doesn't fluctuate too crazy on the appreciation. It's more like a bond, just keeps going up. And then the cash flow is really great and easy to find compared to Austin, where the price is like pretty darn high. Like it's cheaper to rent than it is to actually pay a mortgage on the same place, downtown at least. So I really like Indianapolis for that. I'm hearing a lot. We have a lot of users in Florida as well.
That's the number one place we sell investors is Florida.
I would definitely believe that.
Yeah, that's cool, man. What's the biggest mistake people make in real estate investing that you've seen?
Man, the biggest mistake, because we deal with a lot of people who are just getting started, is they'll say, hey, this doesn't work for me in my market. And I'll take a look at their account. They've added like 10 properties, and it's like, man, you got to really understand it's a numbers game. I used to get hung up on this rundown house where I lived because I was like, this is right by me. I deserve this house, right? It still hasn't sold to this day. I wasted so much time just like obsessing over this one house when it would have been more productive to get out there and find a bunch more houses. And so people quit too soon. They think it doesn't work for them. They think the interest rates are too high, so nobody would buy it. But in reality, you've got to talk to people who have done it so that you can understand what the numbers look like. And if they're getting a deal every 2,000 properties that they drive for dollars, and then you better double it, because you're not going to be as good at sales, right, as they are. So give yourself like a fighting chance by understanding those numbers from somebody who else has been successful doing it in your market.
Yeah, no, it's great advice, man. And anybody listening to this, if you want a free strategy session with me or my team, hit me up, Mr. Jimmy Rex on Instagram, and we'll sit down with you. We'll break it all down and make sure you do this the right way. So, David, thanks again, man. Look forward to, I'm down in Austin quite a bit, so maybe next time I'm coming, I'll give you a heads up when we can go hit the town or something.
That would be amazing.
Awesome, man. Take care.
All right. See you, Jimmy.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.